Put the stool down and stick your eyes on it. Come on.
You put it. Oh, jeez, just.
Right. Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Do you want? What do you want?
I'm recording, right.
Okay. How much light do you want off?
Sorry, you're recording something?
Okay.
Wait, can someone just check that it actually...
Yeah, sure, yeah. It is recording, yep.
Come on, the other one.
Yeah, it's sort of directly.
Yeah, oh, one second.
Out.
Right, a bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Out.
More.
Just shift over.
Yeah.
How difficult can it be?
Okay, so this is my introduction to DSLR photography. So, just briefly, there are three main types of cameras. There's point and shoot, bridge, and DSLR. These are like in order of their sort of their features. So this is a point and shoot. It's like the most basic camera. There's the bridge camera. It's a bit more high tech, and then the DSLR, which is what I'll be talking about. So, with the DSLR, there are three fundamental parts to creating a photograph. These are the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO setting. And these three features are known as the trinity of photography. So the way it works is I'll start with aperture. Aperture is the size of the hole of the camera hole which lets light in, and the effect that this has is to basically determine how much of the picture will be in focus. So on the left there's a photograph of a flower with a deep depth of field. So there's a lot in focus. Well, there's more in focus than on the right picture with a shallow depth of field, where it's much clearer. It's much more focused on the flower. So aperture is crucial with macro and landscape photography. So macro photography requires very shallow depths of field, whereas landscape needs a very deep depth of field. So shutter speed, this is the amount of time that the camera's shutter is left open to absorb light and capture the image. It can range from seconds to minutes. So these are a few examples of photographs with long shutter speeds. These, like, I think these would be probably around 30 seconds or longer. So the way that the shutter speed works with these photos is that the shutter is open long enough to capture the moving of, for example, the water, the clouds, and the people. So it results in a blurred image. So that's good for some things and bad for others. It works nicely here. And these are some examples of very fast shutter speed photography where you've been able to capture a bullet going through a strawberry and a cigarette and water dropping on a hand. And so these are probably photos at around like 1/1000th of a second. And then ISO, which is the setting that increases, it sort of artificially increases the amount of light that enters the camera. It's very useful for low light conditions, and it's available on most phones. Like any smartphone will have it, but it won't work to such a high standard. So the pictures that ISO might help. This is clearly a picture with high ISO, and the problem with ISO is that it creates a lot of noise in an image. So this can be bad, as in this picture. And on the right we see that's a photo with a lot of noise, but it's done for a particular effect. The photo on the left is one that's fairly noise-free. So basically, if you have a look on the piece of paper I've given you all, this is on the other side. There's the relationship between the shutter speed, aperture, and ISO on a manual mode of the DSLR has to be balanced to get the optimal image for the particular sort of setting you want to take a picture of. So you need to balance these three features to get a correctly exposed photograph. So these will just be a few professional photographs from some of my favourite photographers. So architecture by Carl Hugher Schnolls, Andreas Gursky, another famous photographer. Night photography, David Baldwin, brass eye, like 1930s or 40s photographer. Street photography by Bruce Davidson. He's probably one of my favourite photographers. And then some fine art, Bryce Harbert, Ansel Adams, John Tonks, who is from Birmingham and is doing currently an exhibition at the MAC about British Empire. I would recommend it. These are just a few examples of my photography. Architecture. What I might call fine art. And some night pictures. So finally, photography is an art form. It's often very